Welcome to this other session of Toronto Machine Learning Summit 2021. My name is Nadia, and I'm a senior machine learning engineer. And today I'm really excited to be here and to have the opportunity to introduce two of our amazing speakers. Before starting, I would like to remind you that if you have a question, please post it in the chat. I will collect all the questions and ask them directly to our speakers after the presentation. Our speakers for this session are Michael Yan and Greg Svitak. Michael is an accomplished data scientist and thought leader with 10 plus years of experience of research and has brought to market advanced analytics and machine learning solutions. As a person with insatiable intellectual curiosity, he is passionate about finding actionable insight hidden in vast amount of raw data. He has built gambling market trading algorithms and live spot models for online sportsbooks. Data scientist as a service tool, housing customer analytics and recommendation engines for enterprise customers, and helped build quantitative portfolio construction algorithms for PE firms. Now he's working with a team of excellent engineers to help people park their cars using cell phone apps. Greg instead is a passionate early-stage idea builder. He is a devout person who likes the messy gray area of figuring out new ideas with a team of people as dedicated as himself. He has a proven record of working with customers to deliver products and platforms that change industries. Greg defines himself as a hybrid of a technologist who can code, a senior product manager, and an engineering leader. He loves effective teams who are dedicated to build a company together and are driven to make the company successful. Please join me in welcoming Michael Yan and Greg Svitak.
We'd like to thank you for attending our talk today about the crazy, wacky world of parking. With that being said, Michael, let's go on to the, let's go on to the slide. So we kind of covered, a little bit of us individually, but let's kind of cover a little bit about who SpotHero is and some of those types of things. So for those of you who don't know, a lot of people, when they think about parking, they think about, hey, I just, quite frankly, they think about pulling in and, pulling in and paying for parking, going to an event and then getting back in their car and leaving, or, coming into the core business district for work, maybe pre-COVID, and, having a monthly parking key card and doing those things. However, the thing that people don't realize is parking is a massive industry. It's a $30 billion market in the United States, and it's an extremely fragmented market. And it's a key component to how we move in a city. In general, parking is one of the top 3 services in mobility, including how you navigate, and then also listening in your car. And it's a key. It's not something that people 100% enjoy, but it's something that they need to do. And then with that being said, as we already know, based on the over 10 years we've been in business at SpotHero, that 85% of people already use or want to use an app to reserve a spot ahead of time. So as you can see, this is a massive, massive industry. Go ahead and the next slide then. So who is SpotHero? One, like I mentioned before, is that parking is a extremely fragmented market, meaning there's not one player that makes up all the commercial parking facilities in the United States and Canada. If anything, there are over 600 parking operators that operate those facilities, and furthermore, there are over 55 different point of sale systems that make those facilities work. So you can imagine the data problems that causes, the fragmentation about most of these parking partners or operators who are like mom and pop small businesses. And so it provides a lot of room for innovation. The other really interesting thing is, up until 10 years ago in the parking industry, most people paid for parking, and the attendant would take the cash, not credit card or whatever, cash, and put it in cigar boxes. So it's only been within the last 10 years has parking started to digitize, and we feel like we're a major force function of that. With that being said, SpotHero is the largest and the biggest, fastest growing off-street reservation platform in North America. We work with over 7,000 parking facilities. We've parked over 40 million cars. We have over 2 million parking spaces listed on our Apper website, and we work with over 290 cities in North America. We believe we're about 5 to 6 times larger than anyone else in the parking industry. So next slide. So who is SpotHero? So basically, it's really simple. Let's say you're looking for, you want to go to see, a show in downtown Toronto. You pull up our app or website. You can search for where you're going. You can look all the available spots. You can go ahead and pay for it electronically through the app, credit cards or Apple Pay or Google Pay, and then you've basically booked your spot. At that point, once you get to the garage, you're then able to use the app or a printout of a QR code from the website, and you're able to pull up to the garage, through various different means, and basically get in the garage and then stay till the end of your reservation. So we're basically helping you find, look, book, park without having to go into the core business district, without having to circle the block. So with all that being said, is why are we here today? What problems are we trying to solve with machine learning? So while most of this presentation is most of what SpotHero does today, it has to do with online reservations and pre-booking. What we're actually going to cover today is something a little bit different and new, and it's the first time ever this has ever been done in North American parking industry. So basically, the parker flow today for people who aren't using our app or website is they pull up to the garage, and you'll notice in the picture on the left-hand side there's a printed metal sign that basically tells people what the price of parking is, for the different time bands or the different length of stays. So basically the user pulls up, they look at that printed metal sign, they say, hey, I want to stay for this long. They mentally think about it, like how much it's going to cost, and then they go ahead and pull a ticket. So some examples of that metal rate sign, then this is actually a key part of this, is they're kind of all over the board. So those printed metal rate signs, some of them could be, it could be on an hourly basis with maximum lengths of stay. Some of them could have specials, saying if you get in you're coming downtown for work and you need to get, if you're in by 9 o'clock, you basically get a special price. Or even those signs can get covered up for events, and basically someone takes a sign and sticks it out front, right? So in general, though, those rates by using the metal signs, they're not very flexible, and furthermore, you can even view each one of those rate bands or time bands as a different type of customer that the operator is trying to attract. So as you can see, this is all over the board, not very flexible, and not really based on supply and demand. So what the parker flow that we want that's happening, starting to shift, and we're trying to force function this, is rather than going from those metal signs to actually using dynamic rate signs. So which are basically two different examples here. One is basically a TV and with a TV with a PDF. And basically we can change those signs based on manually, or on the right, which is what we're going to talk about today, by using a machine learning algorithm to basically change those prices based on true supply and demand. So as you can see, a lot of the on-site IoT hardware, aka a digital rate board, is really what's enabling a lot of this change to happen. So really the hypothesis we want to talk about today is, in general, SpotHero has a core value of give drivers the right of way, which basically means we care about our drivers first and foremost. And so really what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide better pricing to drivers, but yet at the same exact time increase the drive up revenue for operators. And what I mean by drive up revenue, it's someone who pulls up to the gate and basically pulls a ticket. It's, they're pulling up to the gate and wanting access to the parking facility. And so some of the hypotheses that we wanted to prove out, and that we're still learning about in this, is one of the things is, if you notice those rate bands, the length of the time, can probably fluctuate from day to day. So like the demand for parking on Monday is probably not in the core business district, from 10 o'clock is probably not as great as Wednesday, when because when people are, it's specifically via COVID, they're coming into the office more, rather than every day, coming in more once or twice a day, or once or twice a week. And so basically, if we were able to automate changing the length of the rate bands based on the days, and then we can then use that to basically then change and then figure out the proper price for the length of the bands. The other major thing that we're trying to prove out is whether or not we can increase the drive up revenues for operators by using true supply and demand to at least 8%. The wild thing that I didn't know coming into parking is like, the current industry benchmark for what a good year looks like for an operator is to increase the revenue by 4% year over year. 4%. I'm like, that's nothing. And the reason why they can't really do that is the way that they set prices today is they walk the block. They literally go outside, walk the block. They're like, hey, I think my competitor across the street's charging this. Maybe I can get better than him. And that's really how they base it off of. It's not wrong. It's maybe not the most data-driven way of thinking about it. And then furthermore, the prices are then set based on a revenue committee. They sit around the table like, yeah, I think I can get that. I think I can get that. Man, maybe we change it from 0 to 30 minutes to 0 to 50 minutes. And they really don't use very much data to inform on this. So it was really shocking to me and surprising. So this is the white space and the opportunity that we're trying to fill here. So this is just a visual of what I was talking about, the different rate bands, that basically, that based on the day, what we're trying to prove out with the machine learning algorithms is not only can we change the length of the rate bands, but we could also change the prices for those based on true supply and demand. And that could be anywhere from the first 30 minutes. It might be in the middle bands based on different time slots. Or it could even be like the long spans, long days, or long duration of stay. So all this is flexible, and all this is being predicted by some of the things that Michael will cover here in a second. So one thing I want to call out here is everything that we've been talking about is more on the right-hand side. We call this IQ 360. So this is like the latest innovation that we've been working on. And so this is like never been done before in the U.S. parking industry, and we're trying to be the first to do this. However, on the flip side, before we even started working on this past year, we have a different set of algorithms and machine learning models that we use to price for people who are paying online, basically meaning through the people who book through our website. And this is, we're very proud to say that Michael and others on the team have, we're actually in scaling mode on that side, where this has been live at over 1,300 facilities, and we're able to actually go from the average of 9 rate bands to over 1,000 different rate bands, and soon to be over 4,000 rate bands. And so we're maximizing revenue for our operators for their online marketing channel without having to basically do anything. On the 360 side, what Michael cover here in a second is we're able to predict down to the minute of predict down to the minute what the price of parking should be for every duration of stay. So we're literally able to get down to the very minute areas, and in doing so, we're then using that predictions and information to, in essence, push the rates to the rate boards. And we're happy to say we feel like we're pioneering innovation from that standpoint. How we're doing that right now is we're basically pushing the rates the night before. but we're also currently working on changing those prices to the rate boards every hour, and that will hopefully come next year. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Michael to tell you about all the magic he's worked on.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. It's a wonderful introduction. So yeah, I guess the title of our talk is about lessons learned, right? So we did learn some valuable lessons from this proof of concept or this MVP we just rolled out last month. And so that's here I want to share with you guys. First is how do we translate the business goal into a detailed machine learning model, right? So I think, so think about the pricing situation we're trying to solve here is finding the optimal price, right? But there are some common misunderstanding about the pricing as for the parking, especially for the parking industry is, first of all, is optimal price does not equal to maximum revenue, right? So you might think of from the operator point of view, hey, I want to earn as much money as I could, but however, that is not the case. And the second point is optimal price does not equal to fill up the garage 100%, right? Because, very easy example is like, if you turn over too many cars in, you might have many customer service problems. You might need to hire more people in terms of taking care of those customers and answer the questions. So that might drop down your bottom line a little bit, right? So normally, the optimal price is not equal to the price that you can fill up the garage 100%. So instead of just trying to shoot this overarching goal, then try to solve it at one go, we would kind of set our short-term goal to be, hey, I want to create a pricing algorithm that increase the average ticket price and revenue for a certain garage. Okay, I just want to increase. I don't want to try, hey, let me just find the maximum right now. And the long-term goal is like with the mission of SpotHero's is always we trying to provide this full yield management experience. So what is yield management like in other like airline or hotel business point of view? So yield management for us is always trying to maximize the revenue for the operators per stall, right? So like they have a bunch of parking spaces. How can we maximize the value for those parking spot for them? It's the what we call the yield management. Those can be achieved by changing the adjusting the segment of the short-term versus long-term parkers, the weekend versus transient parkers. Yeah, by doing so, we can achieve the max revenue per stall for our customer, then for our operator, and then that's our goal for this full year management solution. Okay, so taking the first step of finding this optimal price, and from the economics point of view, usually the equilibrium price, you can derive that from just estimate a demand function, estimate a supply function. You find where the cross is, then that's your equilibrium, right? In our case, supply function is relatively easy for us to solve because we have relationship with garages. We know exactly how many spots we have, but the demand side is just as many other companies, the demand curve is extremely difficult to estimate because of some reason. Like, for example, the parking is a really time-varying business. By that, I mean, people coming parking on Mondays, way different behavior or demand than people coming parking on Sunday or Saturdays, right? Or even like holiday versus non-holiday. So that's the first big thing. And the second is like the parking price usually is depending on the facility, right? So we have all the kind of different facilities in our website, which is like personal spa. We also have garages. We also have open uncovered lot. We have a fancy commercial garage with EV charging ports, all bunch of different stuff. And yes, we should price them differently, right? Depending on the attributes of the facility and the amenities, right? And also, the huge unknown factor is that such as weather events, say suddenly there's a football game going on, then, the nearby parking garage will probably going to fill out really quickly, right? Or holiday or any kind of the event, right? So from that point of view, estimating a demand function is almost nearly impossible here. Then how can we go about solving this, the business problem? Is we have to translate into some ways, right? So I think the number one principle for us is when the goal cannot be directly achieved through, let's say, machine learning solutions, first of all, we need to find proxies. And I will explain that later, what are the proxies. And the second, we can break up the solution into steps and granular problems. So, the Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So we can, we can solve a small problem. We go up next, we solve another problem, then eventually we'll achieve what we were trying to achieve. One very useful tool we exercise a lot is called reverse thinking here, right? So what is the reverse thinking in this situation? I will give you guys an example. So the overarching goal is we need to generate prices, right? And then, okay, going back one step. So what does parking represent? Parking is representing the time value of your parking spaces, right? And what determines the value is based off demand, right? Demand determines the value of your parking space. And what are the proxy for the demand? Because demand is kind of like a vague term, right? And so if you think about the garage, what we call occupancy is like how many cars are already inside the garage, or what is the capacity of the garage, and we call them occupancy, right? So occupancy is a really good proxy for the demand. And then, okay, so we found a really nice proxy. And how can we estimate this proxy? Because from here, we maybe can estimate the demand function, right? And so now the problem becomes when we need to estimate the occupancy, it's definitely becoming a really granular and concrete problem. Okay, then we can say about the weather and other factors might affect the occupancy. Then, okay, we have a really solid question we can work on, right? So the game plan we did is we're going to train 3 machine learning models in a sequence. And the first will be this occupancy model, right? Because we want to understand, we want to use that as our proxy for our demand. So what we did is we predict occupancy of a garage down to the smallest interval available, right? Because we have those, what we call a park system, is those hardwares hooked up to monitor the car coming in and out, right? And we record those occupancy data. And then naturally, right, this sounds like, oh, hey, that's maybe a good fit for the time series model with some customer regressor like weather and input, etc., right? And we can use RMSE and R2 as our R-square as our metrics. So since once we have that, we can use that as our input to the next step, which is, hey, now we have the proxy for the demand. What will be the estimation of or prediction of our time value of our parking spots, right? And in that model, what we did is like we predict the value of the time by minutes down to the most granular unit. So we want to understand how much parking spot worth in a certain garage of any time, any minute of the day. And then, because once we did that, we can aggregate this into different intervals, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, if needed, right? So we build a actually boost regressor model, and we minimize our MSE over there, and we have a pretty good result. Then that's our time value model prediction. We can feed that into our final step is we need to provide our operator the rates, right? So with all those minutes value estimations, what we did is we leverage some clustering algorithms, try to match with a counterfactual revenue as our objective function. So we try to maximize the counterfactual revenue based on those different clusters. So we naturally clustering all those different kind of parking demands throughout the day. And we figure out, okay, in those clusters, what will be the time value we get from the previous model, right? And then that will be our price we're gonna send to our downstream operators. So here we kind of dissect the big overarching business problem into 3 specific machine learning problems that we can solve step by step. All right. And with the game plan in mind, I'm going to briefly introduce, what kind of data we have at SpotHero, and for how do we choose the correct data source for those models, and what kind of data quality difficulties we deal with. So first of all, I have a diagram which briefly shows the data architecture at SpotHero. We have a really, really wonderful data engineering team build this beautiful data structure here. So from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, we're going from sources to ingestion to storage and to the processing, right? So for a couple of data sources we have is for example, we have application level data sources from our apps and websites, such as the people searching for our data, or people searching for parking, people buying the reservations, those transactions, those are application level data. And we also have other data sources like financial transactions from Stripe or Braze. And we also have external data sources like Open Weather, SeatGeek for events. And all of them are put into some ingestion mechanism like Kafka segment or some like Fivetran connectors, and all put into a data lake. We have a trainer SQL engine built on top of that. And we use Airflow as our processing engine to query those data sources and do something we want. For example, building a customized MLOps engine, which Greg will cover later on. And so we have all those kind of data sources. Like I think that's another common question for most data scientists. Like when you're working for a relatively big company, you're probably going to have trillions of different data points you can look at. So we have 3 models we're trying to fit. So how do we determine what we need for those models? It's like we kind of asking ourselves those questions. First is, what's our analytical goals, right? So what we're trying to achieve, and what data do we have that dictate those kind of activities? For example, in the occupancy data, right? So in the occupancy model I was talking about, we need to predict how many cars it's going to be in a garage at a certain time of the day, right? And then, naturally, our goal then is trying to say, this data sounds like a time series, right? So we're probably going to use time series models, all right? And so that's how we actually pick what data do we need for our models, and or on the contrary, what data dictates what kind of model we're going to apply. Right. After we decided which data we're going to use in our model, we then need to determine, hey, how good the quality of the data is. So that usually coming from, is the data accurate enough? Do we have any missing values? Or what is the SLA, service contract on those data? Because that's a very important question for the number 3. That's like some of the most of us kind of neglect when we're doing this research or POC phase is we need to always keep in mind, when the model has been put in production, will the data be available, or is the data going to be available fast enough for the model to achieve its purposes, right? So let's say you have a model that needs to give out a prediction in 5 minutes, but your data is updating every 10 minutes, then no matter how good your model is not going to be useful in a real-life setting, right? So those are the questions we constantly asking ourselves when we're building any kind of machine learning solution as SpotHero. And yes, there's some data difficulties we're facing. So for example, for the occupancy data, we're running all kind of accuracy problems. So by accuracy, I mean, so imagine like we have devices, right? Like record license plate when the car coming in and out. We have those gates open and down. We count those, try to figure out how many cars in the garage. But someone, might be drunk or just coming out of the party, lost his ticket, he or she, and they just lift the gate up and just drive the car away, and maybe, the gate is open, let's go. So everybody just drive without actually punching in the ticket. So we kind of lost track of how many cars in the garage for a moment here, right? And also, believe or not, many of those data recording machines or need some level of human interaction. So the operator need to reset the counter once a while, and sometimes they forgot to do that, or because they don't care about that, and then we have this data drift problem, right? So the occurrent data kind of like drifting into one direction, right? And so that's like kind of like the most difficulties we're facing is dealing with the data quality in our occupancy part. For the weather data and for the ticket data, I guess it's pretty normal. Like for the weather, we mainly care about the availability. It's like when we're actually doing the prediction, will this weather API is going to give me a good weather data on the fly, right? And then for the ticket data, is always we care about, hey, why those ticket data, there's some missing labels, because labels determine the customer segments. Customer segment dictates what kind of like should we include in this data point, what not, right? So yeah, we have those common data quality issues we struggle with, but we figure out some ways to try to overcome them. And I hope you guys also can think of like, hey, what kind of the data quality issue for us, and prior to you actually start building on the machine learning models, because without good data, there's no good machine learning model, right? So, okay. And I think the last but not least, we kind of achieved the really interesting in-house machine learning ops system building totally by ourselves. I will give the mic hand over to Greg right now to talk about how do we achieve that and to make everything works for our operators.
Sure. Thanks, Michael. If you could go to the next slide. So I just want to give a shout out to as Michael mentioned, we have an amazing, honestly, like a really amazing data engineering team, and we're starting to build up our machine learning engineering team as well. So there's a couple things I just want to say before we hop into this, and I'm going to go really fast because I know we're running short on time. But so we've invested heavily in Airflow. Michael showed all the complexity. We've parked so many cars, we have tons of data, and because of that, we've had to invest in Airflow as a way to handle a lot of our ETL pipelines. So basically, what is Airflow? Basically, it's a workflow scheduler. And so you can use that. You can use that. You can use the workflow scheduling capabilities to do many different things. But the important part about Airflow is it's all done in code. You can schedule these jobs, these workflows, all configured in code, which provides repeatability. It also provides retry capabilities, and it also provides a segmented way to, in essence, deploy just individual little changes without having to affect the entire pipeline. The important thing here in this slide where I'm trying to show is that it's really good at simple workflows. You can have it do one task, then the next task, and then based on the conditions in the code, it could either do something or skip the next step. However, it could do the next step. If we go to the next slide as well, it could also do really complex things where have one task run, fan out, do basically have 3 separate other tasks run, take the results of that, combine that back together, and do other things from there. So it provides a really awesome workflow scheduling tool, and the other part it provides is monitoring and the ability for us to, for alerting purposes, to know which jobs are succeeding and failing down in individual tasks. So why use Airflow for a simple MLOps? So to be honest with you, we're starting to really we've invested heavily a lot in the data science side. We've had invested very heavily on the data engineering side from a human standpoint, and we're now starting to go through and build up our MLOps capabilities as well. And so as we're building up those capabilities, we wanted to, rather than jumping in and trying multiple different solutions, when MLOps can mean multiple different people, multiple different things, we decided to use what we had as a way to get started. So that's really what it does. And since we're it's basically we can have our own metrics, we can do all those types of things that because it's completely open and extensible. That's the reason that we chose Airflow for doing simple MLOps things. So what does this look like? So basically, in our overall structure, Michael talked about the 3 models that we have. For this drive up dynamic pricing engine. So in general, what we're doing is we're running each of the individual tasks separately, which are in essence kicking off Kubernetes jobs, and each of those for training and prediction purposes. And really, what we're trying to as each of those jobs run, we're storing different features into Postgres, to a feature store, if you will, and then we're storing the model artifacts. The end output of this are the rate band predictions that we showed you before: 0 to 30 minutes for this price, 1 day, 0 to 40 minutes, for this, the next price the next day, and we then present all this information to a web interface to the operator for them to go ahead and to adjust or approve. So the go back. Yeah. So basically, the important key part that we're doing here is we're actually using there's an operator or a function inside of Kubernetes. I'm sorry, it's kind of Airflow called the Kubernetes Pod Operator. And basically, what that does is it allows us to launch containers to run these jobs. And what that allows us to do is ultimate flexibility, because then our data scientists and our machine learning engineers can use whatever libraries they want. They're completely isolated from the, if I want to use XGBoost for one thing in Python, I can do that. If I want to use something else in Java, I can do that. And by isolating them in different containers, we're able to get what we need. And like I said, we're really heavily invested in this, and from all our other things and ETL things we've done. And lastly, it provides a real easy way to monitor the jobs and do any retries if any of the pipelines fail. So what does this look like? In general, the top part, it looks like a workflow. So the top part, that's our training pipeline. The bottom part is our prediction pipeline. In the end, we end up, emailing the rate recommendations to the operators for them to approve or deny. The important thing, the reason why you're not seeing metrics and all those types of things in the flow is because that's being handled in the storing of the metrics and all that stuff's being, and the output of the artifacts of the models are being done inside of the individual container jobs, which can be represented by each individual boxes. So some of the difficulties we overcame. So Michael talked about this, and I just want to talk about this. I unfortunately spend a lot of time in parking garages, depending on how your point of view of that. Like I have when my sons were born in the last couple of months, people sent me blankets for them to hang out in the garage with me. Basically, the data monitoring in parking is, the data is extremely dirty. So Michael made the joke about someone being drunk and running through the gate. That happens at least once every other day. The gates break, and so it throws off a lot of the data. So you can't necessarily just do standard, standard sampling and stuff like that. We've had to actually build we're in the process of building our own monitoring and metrics tools that have some domain knowledge built into that. The other thing I just want to mention too is the Kubernetes Pod Operator. SpotHero was a major contributor of this to the open source community, to the Airflow project itself. Going back to 2017, 2018, we contributed to the design of that by our awesome data engineering team. Hats off to them. And then we followed on the logging functionality by James Lamb. Shout out to him, who's our senior machine learning engineer, about the little buggy. It's very buggy, and we added some different capabilities for that as well. And then lastly, managing the state between the different tasks. As the pipelines run, we need to pass, different values between the different areas, and we end up doing that by that usually is complex JSON, and we ended up having to do that by base64 encoding things and then decoding them in the downstream jobs. And the reason for that is, pretty simple. It was just, different languages and different pipelines as you're passing between different containers can be a little bit difficult. So this is a standard way for every, a string can be read everywhere, no matter which language it is. So in the end, I mentioned before, we're very proud of this. We made ParkingHistory about a month ago. And so this is the day that we actually turned on the first location here in Chicago. And the rest of the team makes fun of my dancing skills, and I would make fun of myself about that as well. So anyways, with that being said, we're very proud of this. Mike, I'll turn it over to you to wrap up and kind of go through these last couple slides.
All right, thank you very much, Greg. Love your dance, as always. I think that's the best slides in this whole deck. I hope you guys think so. So one last thing, we are hiring, we are growing extremely fast. We have over 35 open, product and engineering positions that range from director to business analyst level, and machine learning engineers, etc. data engineers. So so if you have interested, please, hop in our booth, hop in our hopping booth. to chat with our recruiter. So we will be there answering your question as well. And yeah, thank you for attending. And we're gonna leave some time for the questions.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the presentation, and I see some questions are starting to come, so good. Yeah, first of all, you're right. When you go in downtown and you decide to park, you don't think about what there is behind the scene, right? That was really interesting to see. Okay, so let's start with the first question. So, do you run into any challenges with parking lot owners trusting AI?
Yes, very much so. That's a great question. Yes, you have to think about these parking operators. Their job, they feel, is to set the prices, and they feel like they have this expertise, and they've sold those services to basically the asset owner who pays their paychecks. And so basically in the end, parking is a real estate play. So what they're most nervous about is if they trust AI, then what's my job? What's my role? How am I going to get? Am I going to lose my job because of this? Well, so the first thing what we do with this is we make rate recommendations. We're not so in general what the models do now is they produce these rate recommendations. They get sent to the operator the day before, and they have the ability to approve or deny or change them based on their on the ground knowledge. And so in doing so, we're getting them to trust and interact with it. And we also provide visualizations and metrics to help them make that decisions to better understand how that's working. We have lots of room for improvement on that, because we're just trying to understand what an operator would accept or not at this point. So I don't know, Michael, is there anything I'm missing from that question?
No, that's great. I think for the data scientist or machine engineer working for any traditional organization, you're going to run into the similar problem. It's like they will ask you, hey, why should I trust you for this, right? So I think the important thing is start small, right? Because the trust isn't built in a day. So you have to try to build something first, right? And show them the picture and show them this can be done in a different way. That might be also, we are not trying to take your job, but we're trying to help you, right? So by building a trust like that slowly, I think the people will come around, right? Because the tide is always going forward, and people realize that sooner or later. So yeah, but just be patient and just bear in mind those things will happen over and over again. So be prepared.
And furthermore, to be clear, we are not trying to. I know there's a lot of discussion about ethics and machine learning AI. We are not trying to take away operators' jobs. They have other things that they do, such as clean the garage. They provide a very valuable service. They're a very valuable partner for us. We need them in order to do things. So we're not we're very open to the parking industry. We are not trying to take their jobs. We're trying to make them more effective to have them focus on other things.
Thank you so much to both of you. We just got another question. Oh, there is also a request for a special dance for people.
maybe at the very end. Maybe at the very end. So.
And the next question is, earlier you mentioned temporary event pricing for part of a day. Is this part of the dynamic pricing model, band price changing for part of a day?
I'll take this, Michael. At the moment, no, not at the moment. For these temporary events, what we do is we allow the operator, we make the rate recommendations, and we allow them to override those rate recommendations, because quite frankly, going back to the data sources, we don't, if there's maybe not a conference, but maybe let's say a really big breakfast that there's 200 people that are going to park in that garage that day. There's no data set that's going to provide that, right? So we try and do our best with it, but in the future, we'd love to try and figure out better ways of doing that by using, mobility data, how busy there is on the street at any given moment, those types of things. So that's a huge white space that we need to tackle in the near future. Great question.
Thank you so much. So I see another question, and I think it's really a good question. How do you choose between making parking owner happy by maximizing revenue and driver by offering a low price?
I'll take it this way. Low price is one thing. I think it's more fair price would be a good way of saying it. So drivers will get more upset if if they feel like they're getting cheated out of the high prices. However, if they look across the street and they look across the street and the price that they're pulling in is fair compared to what else is happening in the neighborhood, we feel like we're trying to maximize that play that balance. And going back to what I said before is we're doing this based on data. Right now, most operators just guess, and so we feel like we're actually making drivers better because they're when it's not, the garage isn't full, it's probably going to be cheaper than whereas today it's just probably a static price. So it's a trade-off here and there.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, that's a fair answer. So we just got another question. From your experience, what types of events tend to affect the demand forecasting the most?
I can take that. The type of event, what we call them as a random events. By random events, I mean it's not entirely random, but say there's certain thunderstorm coming up, right? But we have no idea when it's going to hit, because if you think about the parking, it's a really interesting concept. Is let's say there's a snowstorm coming up, there's going to be a huge amount of snow falling down, but it could be a good thing for parking, but it's also could be a bad thing for parking, depending on what time of day it comes down. If it comes down to the, let's say, overnight, so the next morning you open up your door, it's like a 20 centimeters of snow right in front of you, you're not going to drive to work. So the parking is going to be affected by that. However, if it's coming down in the middle of the day, people might be looking for parking to park their car and then take subway home or doing something else, right, to extend the stay in the city. So I would say, that's one of the examples of those kind of like random events, or there's a sudden like a traffic accident, a huge traffic jam in certain parts of the city, and people just looking to get to work, they have to park right away. So those are the unpredictable, and I think those tend to affect demand for forecasting the most, because it's really just going to throw your forecast out of the chart. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I don't see any other question coming. I'm curious now if you are integrating data about forecasting, weather forecasting in your models.
That's cool. Oh, Greg said that.
Okay, so we also got the special dance. Thank you so much, Greg. And yeah, I think we can close it here as no other question is coming. Thank you so much for both of you. It was really nice to introduce you and hear about your presentation and for your great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nadia, and thank you everyone for stopping by.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.